Hey, today we are wrapping up the Family Matters series, and for about a month now, we've been looking at some different matters that pertain to the family. And kind of the big idea for this series is what God approves and Jesus affirms, Satan attacks. Right? Satan is always desiring and maneuvering to attack the things that God says, hey, that's good. And we started off talking about genders. We talked about God's approval of sex and that kind of being taking place within the confines of marriage. We spent some time talking about marriage and the meaning of marriage and the purpose of marriage. And then last week we talked about why it's all important. Because there's this thing called generational cycles, and the way we live doesn't just influence our kids, but it actually influences multiple generations. Today we're going to look at one more matter where I believe that Satan is on the attack. Now this is probably the most subtle of all of his attacks. This might be the one that impacts every single one of us in this room. I think it is heavy in our culture, and so I think we need to be alert to how the enemy is working. Right? 1 Peter says that we are to be alert. Because our enemy, the adversary, is prowling around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to be devoured. I don't know about you, but I don't want to be devoured, okay? I hope you don't want to be devoured. So what we're going to do today is just alert ourselves to an area of attack. If we're good with that, say, I'm good. All right, I'm going to ask you a question. In fact, before I ask the question, let me make an assumption about you. My assumption about you is that you desire to be blessed by God. Is that a fair assumption? I know it's not right. You know, we shouldn't make assumptions about people, but my assumption of you is that you desire God's blessing in your life. In fact, that's one of the reasons that you're here today. It's because you want to honor God with your life, and you desire God's blessing on your life, in your life, and through your life. I think that's a fair assessment for all of us. But the question we've got to answer is this. Where do we find God's blessing? Think about it. If we want to be blessed by God, where are we going to most likely experience God's blessing? Because if we can't answer that question, then here's what's going to happen. We're going to be tempted to look for the blessing of God in places where it doesn't exist. Right? Is that fair? Now, if we know where God's blessing is, then we can place ourselves in that environment, in that context, so that we can most fully understand and experience the blessing of God. Let me tell you where God's blessing is not. Okay, let's start with there before we look at where God's blessing is. God's blessing is not in being busy. God's blessing is not in being busy. Now, this is what we might think if we just evaluate our lives. If we were to look at your calendar, okay, if we were to look at my calendar, you might say, Andy, according to your calendar, you believe that the blessing of God is in being busy. And I fell under conviction of this about a month ago. I was here at church, and one of you, just someone in church, walked up like any other Sunday and said, hey, Andy, how was your week? And without giving thought, I said the B word. I said, it's busy. Am I the only one? Anybody? In fact, I was just talking with a gentleman before this service, right? We were talking about this past summer. Man, wasn't this past summer busy? Like, was it just me? Like, it seems like we had last summer off, right? And we're all at home and just kind of chilling and doing our thing. And this summer, it's like, hey, we got to make up for lost times. And so it's like the summer was just stolen from us, right? We were just robbed of a time that we would normally, do certain things. But it was extremely busy. And I threw out that word, and immediately after I said it, it's like God just whispered in my spirit, like, Andy, why did you say busy? Why throw out the word busy? I don't know. I don't want to get too, analytical on this. Maybe I just said busy because it's just the easy word to say, right? When I ask other people, how was your week? How was your month? How was your summer? It's what other people say, busy. So maybe I was just saying it. Maybe there was some projection in there, okay? Maybe I was wanting to project, hey, I have a busy schedule. I'm not a pastor that just sits at home and works one day a week, okay? I want to communicate. I want to project on you that I'm busy, right? I'm doing a lot of work. I'm an important person, right? And so I'm busy, all right? You're projecting this. Maybe it's deflection. Maybe it's, you know what, if I just say I'm busy, maybe they won't ask me to do anything. Right? So I'm building up a fence, and I'm saying I'm busy, and what that really means is, please don't ask me to come, to your birthday party, and please don't, schedule an appointment. Like, please don't ask me to come, help you, mow your lawn or trim your trees, because I'm busy. And we throw out this word, and I've fallen under conviction that maybe we've gotten a little bit careless with this word, busy. Because here's what we're going to find as we read in Exodus 20 and also Genesis 2. The blessing is not found in busy. And this is what we think. This is kind of our sinful nature, right? This is what our flesh tries to impose on our life. If we want to be blessed, then we've got to do more, right? We need to be involved in more. We need to be engaged in more ministry. We need to have more things on our calendar. We need to have something on Monday night and Tuesday night and Wednesday night and Thursday night and Friday night and all day Saturday. We need to always be on the go so that we can be productive, and through the productivity, God will bless. Listen, I just want to warn you, that's not what we're going to see in Scripture. We actually find blessing in a completely different place. So before you read it, let me ask you, are you willing to do whatever it takes to experience God's blessing? Are you willing? I'm not talking about just doing the easy things, but even doing the very, very hard things. And what we're about to read in Exodus chapter 20, it's not an easy thing, okay? It's a hard thing. It's something that actually runs counterintuitive to what we desire and want and plan for our own life. Exodus chapter 20, verse 8, here's what it says. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. All right, here we go. We're jumping into it, right? We're stepping in. Remember the Sabbath day. This is the fourth command, right? Sabbath means rest. It means take a break. God is saying, look, remember the break day, okay? Remember the rest day and keep it holy. You know what's funny about this fourth command? It's like the one command of the 10 Commandments that we want to cross out and say, it's really not that big of a deal. Think about it. Don't commit murder. Can we all agree murder's a big deal? Right? That's a big deal. Don't commit adultery. I think we all would agree. That's a big deal. Turn to your spouse right now and say, that's a big deal. That's a big deal. Don't steal. That's a big deal. Don't have other gods ahead of the one true God. That's a big deal, right? It influences, these are foundational, big commandments. But for some reason, we come to number 4, remember the Sabbath day, and we're like, that's not a big deal. That's not that big a deal. Like what, take a rest day? Take 24 hours to rest and pause and do something different and not be engaged in the everyday affairs of life. That's not really that big. Oh, and that's Old Testament, by the way, right? We don't have to apply to that. Jesus said some stuff about not keeping the Sabbath, and so we don't have to Sabbath today, right? We are hardworking. We celebrate hard work. Happy Labor Day, by the way. Good timing for this one, right? And look, we want to work. In fact, the kids today are learning about working with all of our heart, and our work should be done for the glory and honor of Jesus Christ. Like, that is so important. But we've got to understand that the fourth command, it is a big deal. Let's continue reading. You are to labor 6 days and do all your work. A couple of assumptions right here from the Scripture. That God is communicating to us, guess, we have a work. You have a work, okay? You have a job, and your work is bigger than your 9 to 5, okay? That may be part of it, but I think our work is more foundational. We might even use the word calling here. We might even use the word purpose. Look, God has given us a work to do, and this work isn't our idea. This work is God's idea, and he says, look, you have a work, and the second assumption is, I've given you a time frame to do it. You have 6 days to do your work. Does that make sense? Now, the very next word in verse 10 is the word but. In other words, we're walking down this track, but now we're going to transition, all right? But the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. You must not do any work. Here's what God is saying. Look, you have a work, okay? You have a job to do. You have a calling. You have a purpose. And you have 6 days to do your work. But the seventh day, it's different. The Sabbath day, it's different. It's holy. It's set apart. I don't want you to do any work. Now, why would God say that? I think what God is communicating to us is this. Look, you've got 6 days to do your work. I need 1 day to do my work. And the day that I'm going to do my work is that seventh day. The day that I work in your life and through your life and on your life is on that day that you set aside and you rest and you pause and you get out of the rat race and you allow me to do a refreshing, restorative work in your life. Now, I also love in verse 11, God picks up on the reason why. He says, "For the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and everything in them in 6 days, and he rested on the seventh day." Here it is, tune in. "Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and declared it holy." Pop quiz. Which day did God bless? The Sabbath day. God's blessing is on the day of rest. God never blesses the workday. He doesn't. He blesses the day we do nothing. Now, all of you said at the very beginning, you want to experience the blessing of God. All of you said you'll do whatever, I think all of you said, you said, I'll do whatever it takes to experience God's blessing. Here's the very hard thing. Take a day off. Now, I say it's a hard thing because we're like, oh, I would love to, right? But Andy, you don't know my schedule. Like, you don't know all the things I have to do. I've got to get this done. I've got to get this done. And we've still got time for this. No one has time to take a break. Listen, God's blessing is on the day of rest. God's blessing is on the day that we set aside and we're like, I'm not going to do anything to stay. And it doesn't mean you have to sit at home on the couch and watch Netflix, okay, all day long. But it does mean that you step out of the work that you do on a continual basis and you say, I'm going to take a day and allow the refreshing and the restoration of God to happen in my life. Listen, for some of you, you sit at a desk all week long, and on Saturday, you love to mow your lawn, right? And that is rest for you. That's good. Mow your lawn on your rest day. For some of you, you work out in the heat all day long, and the last thing you want to do is mow your own lawn. Take a day and don't mow your grass. Take a nap. Go out to eat. If you eat out all week long, take a day and cook at home. Like it's saying, I'm going to take a day and I'm going to step outside of the normal rhythm and the busyness, and I'm going to pause and I'm going to clear the schedule, and I'm going to find rest in the Lord. This is a big deal. Now, if we go back to Genesis chapter 2, we see where this begins. Genesis 2, verse 1, it says, "So the heavens and the earth and everything in them were completed on the seventh day." God had completed his work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all the work that he had done. Verse 3, "God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy, for on it he rested from all his work of creation." So what is God doing? He is setting a pattern for us. I've completed the work, and so now I'm going to rest to establish for you this pattern of work and rest. Work and rest. You have 6 days to do your work. You have 1 day to allow me to do my work. Do you know God can do more in our rest day than we can do in a 6-day work week? Let me read you a verse from Psalm 127, 1 and 2. It says, "Unless the Lord builds a house, its builders labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over a city, the watchman stays alert in vain. In vain you get up and you stay up late, working hard to have enough food. Yes, he gives sleep even to the ones he loves." Now this is a song, this is poetry. And so the end here, what it's saying is that God can provide for you in your sleep. You work and you toil for food, right? We work and we toil to make a living, and God says, look, what you're working so hard for all week long, I can provide for you in a 10-minute nap. I can do more through your life when you take a 10-minute nap than you can do in a 60-hour work week. This is God saying, look, this rest day, it's not just for you, but it's to show you and to show the world that you trust me. And then you're allowing me to come in and provide for you in your life. Listen, this fourth command, it is a big deal. And Jesus didn't do away with the Sabbath, by the way. I mean, he would heal people on the Sabbath, and he would do work, and he would tell a guy, hey, pick up your mat and walk. And the Pharisees got all ticked off about it, and they were like, oh, I can't believe you'd ask someone to work on the Sabbath. You know, you're not of God. And Jesus had to remind them, look, God didn't create the Sabbath for man. Wait, no. I got that back. God didn't create man for the Sabbath. God created the Sabbath for man. You're not here to serve the day, so quit worshiping the day. Sabbath on a Tuesday. Sabbath on a Thursday, right? It doesn't have to be that seventh day. That's what has changed in the New Testament. But the principle of taking a day to rest, that principle still remains in effect. I love the story of a pastor that I follow in the Dallas area, and he was sharing with this. I heard this in a message like 4 or 5 years ago, and it's always spoken to me, and I'll share it again. He was talking about how he always took off on Fridays, and that was his rest day, right? Pastors, we do a lot of work on Sunday, and so not really a restful day. And so he set aside on Friday, and that was on his calendar. And he had a friend call him one time and say, hey, Pastor, I need to meet with you. Are you free on Friday? And he looked at his calendar, and he told his friend, he said, well, I'm not doing anything on Friday. And his friend said, great, do you think we can meet for about an hour and a half? I got some things that I want to run by you. I need your help. I need your advice. And the pastor said, no, wait a second. I'm not doing anything on Friday. And his friend said, yeah, I heard you. It means your schedule's open. Like, would 10 o'clock work? Like earlier the bed, like 8 o'clock? You want to meet in the afternoon, like 4 o'clock? And the pastor said, no, you're not listening. I'm doing nothing on Friday. That's what I'm doing. Nothing. Not meeting with you. I have scheduled nothing on Friday. Therefore, I'm doing nothing. And because I'm doing nothing, I don't have time to meet with you. Now, how would you feel if I told you that? Your laugh was a little bit less on that one. Right? We kind of said, well, that's not that big. Like, you're not doing anything. Like, it's not that big of a deal, right? You can meet. We can just schedule out an hour. Yeah, you could. You could schedule out an hour. Then you could schedule in 2 hours. You might as well just schedule the whole morning, right? You're already there. And then pretty soon we're caught in this loop of wanting to do more. And we're missing out on the blessing of God. The pastor went on to say, would you ask me to cheat on my wife? He said, no, I wouldn't ask you to cheat. Would you ask me to steal? No, I wouldn't. Would you ask me to kill somebody? No. You're asking me to work on a day that I have set aside for the blessing of God. I want to share that story to say, look, this is a big deal. And what if the reason we're so stressed out, right? What if the reason we're always on the edge? What if the reason we're tired is because we have deliberately chosen not to live by the principles that God has laid out for us? So look, here it is. The blessing is in the rest. The blessing's in the rest. It's not in the busy. The blessings of God are in the rest of God. Now, I want to give you 4 things about rest this morning, all right? If you're taking notes, you might want to jot these down. Number 1, rest is the starting place. Rest is our starting place. And here's, I want to throw that out there because our belief is that rest is the ending place, right? Rest is at the end of the week. I work, and then so I can rest, right? I do all that I can do, and rest is like dessert, right, at the end of a meal. It's the treat. Once I get all these things done, then I can rest. Listen, rest is not the ending place. Rest is the starting place. It needs to be the starting place in our lives. In other words, we don't work for rest. We work from rest. There's a big difference. Now, you might be thinking, some of you, you're way smarter than me, and you're thinking, but Andy, Genesis 1, God worked for 6 days, and then he rested, right? And so the pattern from God is you work first, and you earn your rest. Let's back up. I was visiting with a man in our church, looking around. I don't think he's in here this week right now. There he is. Garth's back in the back. Garth is very bright. We were talking about this very thing, and he said, Andy, what does God's word say in Genesis 1 about the day, about each day? I said, well, it says there's morning and there's evening the first day. There's morning, there's evening the second day. He says it doesn't say that. And I'm thinking, yes, it does. He says, go back and read it. And so we went to Genesis 1, and I'm reading it. I'm like, look, it says it right there, Garth. Like, you're mistaken. I'm right. It says morning and evening the first day, morning and evening the second day, morning and evening the third day. And he says, no, you're missing it. Look again. And I went and read it, and lo and behold, here's what it says. There was evening and there was morning the first day. There was evening and there was morning the second day. There was evening, there was morning the third day. So listen, even in God's pattern of a 24-hour day, he starts with sleep. He says, you sleep first so that you can work. You don't work all day so you can come home and sleep. I want you to work from rest, not work for rest. So rest, it should be our starting place. Sunday is probably the most stressful day for me, probably the most intense day for me. It's a long day, and not just for me. I want to include other people on our church staff, Pastor Stephen, and the rest of our team as well, and many volunteers. It's a hard day. And here's something that I've learned: when I don't rest on Saturday, what happens is I come into Sunday tired, and then I end Sunday really tired, and that just kind of sets a domino effect all week long. But for me personally, when I can set aside, like from Friday evening till about Saturday evening, when I start with that, man, I'm just so much more refreshed on Sunday, which then sets the pace for the entire week. Listen, rest should be our starting place. Number 2, rest is our restoring place. God is a restorative God. He loves to restore broken things. He loves to restore lives. That is his ministry, right? Restoration. And the first 4 letters of the word restore are what? Rest. So guess where restoration happens? It happens when we rest, right? Restoration doesn't happen when we're always on the go. We can't expect to be restored by God when we don't allow and allot for time to move and work in our lives. So rest is our restoring place. In Matthew 11, verse 28, here's what Jesus says. He says, come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. I'll give you rest. If you're tired, if you're worn out, if you're burnt out, if you're stressed out, come to me. Now, what does he mean, come to me? I mean, he lived 2,000 years ago. Like, how are we today in 2011 supposed to, 2021? I just took the DeLorean back 10 years. How are we supposed to take the DeLorean back 2,000 years and be with Jesus? Is it just for them? No, when he says, come to me, he's saying, get in my presence. And listen, to get in his presence, what do we have to do? We've got to pause. Scripture says, be still and know that I am God. You know what the word still there means? It means stop striving. Stop working so hard. Stop trying to do it on your own strength, on your own power, on your own time, in your own way, in your own energy. Stop all that and just know that I'm God. And you just give me one day. Well, man, I can do a restorative work in your life. Exodus 14:14 also says the Lord will fight for you. That's a good verse, right? The Lord will fight for you. You know that's not the end of the verse. It says, if you'll be still. We want God to fight for us, but we kind of want him as a teammate, as a buddy. Right? All right, God, I'm going into battle. I need you to, cover my 6, and cover my 9, and just make sure, and we're going to fight the enemy. All right, God, I want to impress you. I want to show you what I can do. And God's over here saying, why would you do that? I'll fight for you. You just need to be still. So it's in that rest that it is our restoring place. The third place about rest is our providing place. It's where we experience and see the provision of God. When God was instructing Israel when they were about to go through the wilderness on the manna, right? He says every day you're to go out and get bread. You're only to accumulate enough for that day. Why? Because tomorrow I'm going to have more bread for you. And I'm going to train you and show you and teach you that I'm your provider. You can trust me. But on day 6, what were they to do? They were to go out and get 2 loaves of bread. Or not 2 loaves, or 2 days of supply of manna. And that would cover them for that day. And so it was in that break that God was saying, look, I'm not going to let the bread mold overnight for this case like I would for the rest of the week. But for this, I'm going to provide for you and meet your needs. Listen, when we take a day and we rest, we're allowing the provision of God. And when you see the provision of God in your life, man, you're blessed. So remember, the blessing is in the rest. If I could take a moment and just talk to parents for a second. If you're a parent or grandparent, I'm sure you can relate to this. I've got a little rope here that is 18 feet long, okay? 18 feet long. This stage is 16 feet wide here at the front, so a little bit longer than that. Imagine that this rope, okay, represents 18 years in your child's life. Every foot, represents about 1 year. And when we have a child, what does it feel like? When you've got a newborn baby, it's like, I've got them forever. Right? They're just going to be here forever. But then, we celebrate their first birthday, and we're about right here. Listen, and a good definition of parenthood is leadership. That's what parenting is. God is calling you to be the leader to these children, to show them and lead them in the way that they should go. Now, when they're 1, guess what? You got a lot of leverage, right, against that 1-year-old. Right? You got a lot of leadership. You have a lot of influence. But then they turn 2. Terrible 2s, kind of time frame. They're starting to get, some experience, starting to do some things on their own. Now that child has a little bit more leverage to do some things they want to do. You still have a lot of leverage, but you have a lot less than when they were 1. Now, then, in the case, one birthday for my child that really hit me hard was when she was 9, our oldest. And it hit me when she was 9. It's like, whoa, we're halfway through the rope here. Now, we've still got a lot of leverage, but guess what? Every year that passes, we've got a little less leverage. Every year that passes, we have a little less leverage, and now they're becoming a little bit more independent, and they've got a little bit more leverage. And then somewhere down the road, your child, God bless you, turns 16. You know what that means? It means you don't have much leverage, right? And typically that means in our culture, they're getting their license, they're becoming a whole lot more independent, they're starting to think for themselves. And listen, a lot of times we wait till the child gets here at 16, that we want, we need to do this, I need to teach you this. And what we realize is we don't have as much influence at this point as we did when they were here. So listen, I'm communicating this idea that it matters where we start with our kids, that we need to start at the very, very beginning. Everyone say hi, Edward. Hi, Edward. Oh, you're coming up to play. Yeah. That's right. I'm just up here preaching, just doing my thing. And in that, here's what I wanted to communicate. As parents, we're teaching our kids where to find provision. And we're either teaching our kids, you need to provide for yourself. You need to work hard. Now listen, God honors work. And I don't want to, if you're lazy, then go listen on YouTube, find a sermon on hard work. But if you're a hard worker, maybe this message is for you, that you need to find rest in the Lord. Because it is in Him that is our providing place. And how we spend our time doesn't just influence us, but look, it impacts our kids and the way we're training them and where they should find provision in their own lives. Last thing. Rest is our eternal place. It's our eternal place. In Hebrews 4:9-10, it says this, therefore a Sabbath rest remains for God's people. In other words, Sabbath rest doesn't just go away, it doesn't disappear, but a Sabbath rest remains. For who? For God's people. For the person who has entered his rest has rested from his own works, just as God did from his. Let us then make every effort to enter that rest. You see, there's a parallel here when it comes to work and then the rest that follows. And the parallel is that as long as God still has us on this earth, guess what? We have a work to do. We have a job to do. You're alive today. That tells me God has a plan and a purpose for your life. There is a work that he desires for you. Guess what? When we pass away, guess what's coming? A day of rest. Not a 24-hour day, but an eternal day of rest. I don't know about you, but I long for that day. Where there's no more turmoil, no more depression, no more vying for time, and we've got an endless amount of time because we're outside of it. We are eternal beings, and there's a part of us that longs for that rest. Listen, there's a lot of people that wake up every single day, and they're wondering, how can I enter that rest? How can I be made right with God? And the assumption is that I've got to do it. I've got to do the work. I've got to do it. And I hope I've done enough good. You ask a lot of people, are you going to heaven? Well, I hope so. How do you know? Well, I just hope I've done enough good to outweigh the bad. You know what that is? That's work. Man, work creates stress. Work gives a burden. Scripture says that through Christ, we get to enter a rest. Not just an eternal rest then, but an eternal rest now. We get to wake up and know I can rest in the assurance of knowing that Jesus Christ died in my place. And I don't have to work for eternity. But I have been gifted eternity through the blood and sacrifice of Jesus Christ. Listen, rest is a big deal. Rest is God's story, and it is a picture of what we have to look forward to in heaven forever and ever and ever. Listen, eternity with God in heaven forever in that rest, it's not a boring place, okay? There's going to be work. There's going to be things that we get to do. There's going to be incredible worship. I joke about this a lot. There's going to be food. Man, and it's going to be good. But there's going to be rest. And that's the difference.